Hey, so we're going to be doing our math discussion on the Wagner and the battery questions. So we're going to start with Wagner. And it says, how do the 5 strategies proposed by Wagner help in establishing a classroom math community? So when reading the article, the 5
steps, right, you said?
Yeah.
So it was pay attention to the speaker, show you're listening through verbal and nonverbal cues, provide feedback by asking questions or summarizing what the speaker is saying, allow the speaker to finish before asking questions or stating opinions, respond appropriately by being open, honest, and respectful. And then what was the question again?
How do the 5 strategies proposed by Wagner help in establishing a classroom math community?
Oh, okay. So, I don't know if you want to start, but I was just thinking, like, particularly my ELA classroom at my practicum site, we're learning how to, like, construct arguments and have, like, arguments that students are being respectful and, like, learning how to have arguments with each other and, like, state their opinions and stuff like that. So I thought of this a lot, where, like, you're showing that you're paying attention to the speaker, you're listening, and you're providing feedback and asking questions. So I think, like, students really engaging with each other. I cannot remember okay, yeah, so I think that's, like, a really great way of, like, building a community, because then students are really, like, learning how to be open, honest, ask questions, and just, like, overall creating a community, especially, like, paying attention and
Yeah, I kind of had similar thoughts, because, like, the strategies that he proposed, like, created, like, a safe environment for students, and like where they can share, and, like, they kind of learn about how they should share and, like, how they should respond to other people's, like, respond, like, to what other people may be sharing. But I guess, like, I feel like my CT's co-teacher, who, like, teaches math, kind of does this, because, like, she has created, like, a classroom math community, in the sense of, like, she'll use students' problems and then, like, have them talk about it, and she'll, like, try to find different, like, patterns that, like, students might all be kind of doing. So, like, she'll bring up those patterns, like, to a specific group of students and being like, like, how can we look at this, like, you know, and kind of, like, having the students respond to each other.
One thing that I do want to note when thinking about this is that a lot of teachers have one way of showing that you are participating, and I think that one way isn't always correct. Like, you really have to give different ways of participating, and so especially, like, show you're paying attention to the speaker, but a lot of times people think that's just, like, the normal way of, like, giving eye contact and stuff like that. So that's one thing to be thinking of, is, like, how are you allowing your students to show that they are listening, whether that's, like, a thumbs up or something like that.
And, like, another thing to think about too is, like, it specifically says, like, active listening means you make eye contact the entire time.
Right.
But there are some cultures, like, students might be a part of a culture that, like, looking in the eye, like, could be disrespectful. So, like,
right,
you know,
so
if students aren't necessarily, like, it doesn't mean that they're not listening if they're not looking at you. Like, there should be different ways of, like,
that's a really good point.
You know, you can't just assume that a student isn't listening if they're not looking at you. But I mean, I feel like all of these strategies could be used to create, like, a math talk community, and I feel like it's kind of like a basis of like what you should work from.
Especially, I was thinking, like, in my own not practicum site, but my own classroom one day, sentence stems, like, having them in the classroom is, like, so important, I think, because students can really look at them and think about how they want to say something, and it just kind of gives them access to a lot of different ways to talk about something or to have an opinion on something, that makes it more respectful and helps them learn those.
Yeah, and I feel like sentence stems are great, like very helpful to, like, not just, like, normal students, or, like, but also to, like, English language learners too, because like, we're also, like, taught that, like, we should provide sentence stems, I think, if they need it, but, like, this is also helpful because some students aren't really sure of where to, like, start and be like, how do I say that I agree with this person, or how do I say that I disagree with this person?
I agree.
So like I really liked the stems that they give, like I agree with blank because whatever, this is what I think, like stuff like that. And I think like with explanation versus justification, like I think it's more important that a student is explaining, and like instead of having to like necessarily justify what they did, but like explain it, because then it's like, it could be wrong, but at least they're able to explain it.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
What's the second question?
There isn't a second question for this one. But last note, I feel like with this too, like the students helped create like a classroom community, and like it's not just like the teacher like being like, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
It's like, here's like an idea, like let's work together to like create a classroom talk, or like a sense of community.
I think one of the biggest things that we've learned throughout the last 3 semesters is just classroom community. Like your students need to be teachers as well, and you should be a learner, and like positioning your classroom so that students are learning from each other. And then I feel like when you have classroom community, you don't have necessarily this feel of like others are different than me because they're better or worse. It's like everyone's learning, and it really becomes a learning environment.
Yeah.
And that's like what school should be.
Yeah, and I feel like it kind of like leads into like the next article, which is battery, which the first question is, what are particular talk moves or teacher actions that could help shift the assumption around math ability being in it, so like normal. But like in the article, hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. But like there's like these 3 specific strategies that like teachers could use, and it was like eliciting a complete explanation from students, revoicing student thinking, and highlighting students' mathematical competence. And they said, like specifically from the article, is like these strategies cannot be implemented when norms of mathematical classroom discourse require only one answer. In contrast, these strategies require an environment in which teachers use follow-up questions to elicit complete explanations, which is consistent with the last of the 8 effective mathematics teaching practices, to elicit and use evidence of student thinking that is found in principles and actions, etc., etc. And then revoicing, repeating, highlighting, or rephrasing students' ideas is a way of recognizing the mathematical importance of specific students' thinking. And I think that's important, like when kind of like sharing with students, or like having them realize that, like, or like if you're like highlighting a student, it's like, you're doing good, but like you're not necessarily saying like you're doing great, okay, like let's move on.
Yeah.
But like kind of like walking through the process and like letting them know that like they're on like the way to success, but like reminding them that it's like still a learning process, and like you're supposed to grow instead of like necessarily stop.
And you don't have like, just because you know the answer doesn't mean that you like they're not growing. So you want to make sure in math you're like, we are growing. Like every time we are figuring something out, it doesn't matter about the answer necessarily, it matters more in like our strategies, but like basically positively framing the mathematics ability and creating a growth mindset within your classroom. I know growing up I did not have that in school, and even just like times math test, like the fact that like you basically have to see how many you can get in a minute. I like, if you didn't get a lot, because of course you shared with your partners or like people
they would have to
class.
check them.
Yeah, like I don't know, it was I just felt like you didn't really have a growth mindset, and they give you this fixed mindset because you feel like you can't grow because you don't know the answer. But it's not always about the answer, it's more like the way you get there and how you're getting there. And I feel like that's just so important for students to know.
Yeah, and I feel like tying that into like teacher actions, like if you really want students to like feel confident in their mathematical abilities, like taking the time to like walk through it, and like letting them use multiple ways of doing a specific problem, and not just using the standard algorithm and being like, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is how you're smart, because if you can do it this way, then you get the right answer, then you're good.
Right.
Because not every student is going to think that same way.
Well, and like me particularly, I will do do something one way and it might work and might get the answer. But then if I found out a different strategy that might work better for my brain, like I don't know, that I feel like, especially in college when we took those math courses, he'd be like, okay, I'll give you points if you can show me your work.
Yeah.
Just like show your strategy and your thinking and how you're doing it. And like, it didn't make you feel like an idiot. It made you feel like, oh, okay, well I got this part right because I was thinking about it in this way, and like he knew that, and so I'm growing, you know, where if you just they get just like, oh, you got the wrong answer, you just feel like shitty about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then going on to the second question, it says, what does the work in creating Math Talk communities and carrying mathematical interactions mean for shaping positive student math identities? Think about how it supports how students may identify as a math person or not. And I wrote something down. Like, well, I guess I could like go from experience, but like, I feel like by creating like a positive student math identity, it would be like, I don't know, like I remember like specifically in 6th grade, like needing help and like always asking for help, and my teacher would just like not help me. And like we had like a math test, and I think it had to do with like geometry, and I literally sat at my desk and cried, and I could not fill out anything, and then I had to hand it in and I failed. So like just, I don't know, like for teachers just to like be willing to help and like walk through how to do problems like in different ways, because like not every student's brain is going to work the same.
Well, and like going off that, being transparent in your classroom, like telling your students this is what a growth mindset is, and your parents might have told you that you're not a math person or something, like, but really like you're not a math person. Like I feel like even when I was in like middle school, I really liked math, and my dad once said to me, well, you're more of an art person, you're not really a math person, when I wanted to do geometry or like early geometry, and it just like tore me apart because I was like, what? No, I actually kind of like math, you know, whatever, but like because I wasn't as fast as others or something, like I don't know. I think the teachers definitely could have created an environment where like I had felt like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because I feel like I've always felt like I wasn't a math person, just because like I would try really hard, but like we were only taught specific ways of doing it. Like I remember in kindergarten using like blocks and stuff, but then like after that, I don't really remember. Yeah, it was like you have to do the number on top and then on below, and then you have to add it together, or like you have to cross out.
And being a visual person, they're like, okay, do this test, but you don't get blocks.
No.
You don't get like little things to help you, you know, you have to do it all, you know, or you can't use a calculator. You can't, like my teacher used to tell me in 3rd grade, you can't use your fingers. You can't use your fingers. I was like,
how am I supposed to figure it out? Like,
I don't know. Like I would literally hide to try to like count under my desk because I was like, I am not good at math. I don't know. So I feel like she could have definitely been like, oh, maybe you need some visuals. Let's work on visuals instead of just the way everyone was supposed to be doing it.
Like I feel like too, when thinking about it, like connecting to practicum, like I feel like the teacher that I work with has created like a very like positive environment for students to like view themselves as mathematicians or like whatever, because she'll like call them brain detectives, and like I've kind of like moved off of that, and it's like now creating like mysteries out of math, so it's kind of like they're the detectives and they have to figure it out, but like you can use like whatever ways that you want to like figure it out, cool. And then be like,
and fun.
Yeah, and be like, hey, you know, I made a mistake, whoops, but that's okay because we can learn from this mistake and move forward.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, I think that's it. Bye everybody.
Bye.